At night, the city was covered in shadows, and the lights of the houses shone like solitary beacons. Raphael, a postal delivery man, walked through the streets with his backpack. On the outside, he was the exemplary employee, but on the inside, a predator lurked. He observed the women passing by carelessly in the moonlight. The uniform was his disguise, and the doorbell was his call to action. He knew that by ringing it, he would open the doors to his dark intentions. The adrenaline pulsed through his veins, driving his malevolent mission. That night, he chose Laura's house, a young woman who always seemed so distracted. The packages were piling up at the door, a sign of her absence. Raphael looked around, ensuring that no one was watching him. The doorbell rang sharply, and his heart raced. When Laura opened the door, her smile quickly faded upon noticing his strange demeanor. "Hi, delivery from the post office," he said, holding a package like a sinister gift. Little did he know that it would be Laura's last delivery. As she reached out to take the package, Raphael pushed her inside. The terror began, and her survival instincts kicked in. The struggle was quick but brutal. Laura tried to scream, but the sounds were soon silenced by a gut-wrenching cry of despair. Raphael's mind was in a trance, consumed by a mix of power and pleasure. What was once a mere delivery turned into an act of immeasurable violence. When it was all over, Raphael fled, leaving chaos behind, like a ghost in the night. The following weeks were marked by a disturbing silence in the city. Laura was never seen again, and fear began to spread among the women. The police were perplexed, with no clues and not a single witness. The disappearance case seemed like an incomplete puzzle. Citizens began to question, and whispers of a possible predator grew each day. Raphael watched everything from a distance, hidden under his mask of normalcy. The adrenaline that once drove him now transformed into unease. As the investigation progressed, the police began to build a profile of the possible assailant. An experienced detective, Clara, was assigned to the case. Her sharp intuition told her that the answer was closer than they thought. Clara analyzed delivery patterns in neighborhoods with high rates of disappearance, but direct clues were lacking. She was methodical, tracing connections between cases and using modern technology to find information. The pressure mounted, and her nights were spent awake, dedicated to unraveling the mystery. Another disappearance came to light, creating even greater panic. This time it was Mariana, a colleague of Laura. The similarities were undeniable, and fear began to take hold of the community. Clara decided that they needed to intensify the search operation. "We need every man and woman on the streets investigating delivery people and patterns of behavior," she said in a tense meeting. The pressure weighed heavily on everyone. It was a race against time, and every second counted to prevent the next tragedy. For his part, Raphael was beginning to feel the weight of paranoia. News of Mariana's disappearance echoed in his mind. He experienced a mix of excitement and frustration. His pursuits were now at risk. He knew that one slip could be fatal. As women locked themselves in their homes and the police intensified their patrols, his confidence waned. He needed a new strategy, something to keep him in the game. And so, he hid even deeper under the disguise of his routine. With the pressure increasing, Clara began to gather testimonies from witnesses who had seen something that fateful night. One woman mentioned a delivery person with a vacant stare, a sense of unease. "He seemed to be watching everything," she said, a shiver in her voice. Each new report was carefully analyzed, and Clara assembled a mosaic of information. What once seemed like an isolated case was now becoming a complex web of despair. Raphael watched the news, beginning to feel the ground shift beneath his feet. As the investigation advanced, the police decided to launch a public awareness campaign. Posters were spread throughout the city, warning women to be cautious of unknown delivery people. "Don't open the door without checking," read one impactful message. Raphael felt his world collapsing. The precautions were affecting his game, and he found himself feeling increasingly cornered. The sensation of being just a delivery person haunted his mind. The formulas of control were threatened by a growing vigilance. Raphael then decided he had to diversify his tactics. The next delivery would be a critical turning point. He planned a meeting with a new victim, a newcomer to the neighborhood named Fernanda. She was young, naive, and often home alone. He felt like a maestro ready to conduct his symphony of terror. Once again he dressed up and adjusted his uniform, an armor in a dark world. Just one more time, he thought as he left, moving through the shadows. That night, Raphael headed to Fernanda's house, his heart racing with anticipation. He rang the doorbell, anxiety mixing with adrenaline. The door opened and Fernanda smiled confidently. "Hi. Was there a package for me?" Her apparent innocence seemed to distract him from his plan. Raphael took a deep breath, trying to push away the hesitation that arose. "Yes, a delivery from the post office," he replied, forcing a smile. However, a flash of guilt crossed his mind. The doorbell had always sounded like an invitation, but now it felt like a death sentence. As he extended his hand to deliver the package, something unexpected happened. Fernanda grasped the box tightly and pulled it closer. "Thank you. I was looking forward to you," she said, unaware of the change in his demeanor. Something inside Raphael momentarily broke. He hesitated. Leaning into this cruel act isn't what I want, he thought. But the inner voice, lost in despair, quickly screamed louder. Before he could regain control, he lunged inside, darkness overtaking him once more. The internal lights went out during the struggle, and the sensation of power dominated Raphael. However, amidst the violence, Fernanda's mind found an escape. A heavy object appeared in her hands. Instinctively, she reacted and struck Raphael with all her might. The impact caught him by surprise, and the pain made him recoil. Instead of control, he now felt vulnerable. Anger and fear mixed, and the only thing he could do was run away, leaving Fernanda terrified and breathless. In the aftermath of the attack, Clara and the police received information about a new incident. Fernanda, trembling but determined, reported everything. Clara quickly organized an operation in response to this pattern. "We need to act swiftly," she said, her determination evident. A complete sweep would be conducted across all delivery areas in the city. The teams prepared to patrol the streets, focused and determined to catch the predator. Time was running out, and the pressure was mounting for the police to end the cycle. Raphael was in a panic. With the police's tightening noose, he knew he could no longer make deliveries. The idea of being arrested terrified him, and the prospect of losing everything he had built in his facade consumed him. The adrenaline that once propelled him now turned into despair. He hid in an alley, wondering, "What do I do now?" He knew that any mistake would land him behind bars. New strategies began bubbling in his fractured mind, but uncertainty paralyzed him. Meanwhile, Clara continued to intensify the vigilance. The descriptions of the delivery person that Fernanda provided became invaluable. She managed to establish a clear profile of the assailant, and the city anxiously followed the news. "The postal man is out there," she proclaimed at a press conference, "but we're close." The citizens' determination grew, and hope was reignited in the city. Clara warned them, "If you see something suspicious, contact us immediately." Raphael felt the noose tightening. The lack of deliveries left him with no options, and frustration grew within him. He decided he needed a bold plan to escape the situation. The use of the uniform had been advantageous, but paranoia now turned into a trap. He began tarnishing the use of the disguise, considering using the facade to his advantage. "What I need is a distraction," he decided, planning a new attack that would change the game. That night, Raphael put his plan into action. He decided to infiltrate an area where new deliveries could be made. With a new demeanor, he blended in with other delivery people. But he knew this would be his last chance. When sirens echoed through the night, he calmed himself, aware that control could still be within his reach. However, he had no idea that Clara and her team were tracking him based on valuable information. The tension grew as the hunt began. Clara was on the streets, and her instincts led her to notice suspicious movements around. "It's him," she thought, a chill running down her spine. With her team ready, she prepared a trap. Every delivery was being monitored, every movement recorded. The faces of the delivery people passed in a blur of panic and determination. When Raphael passed by, Clara and her partners quickly sensed something strange. "Draw closer slowly," she said, her heart pounding fiercely. The trap was about to close. Raphael realized he was under surveillance, and his mind began to collapse. "I'm going to get caught," he thought, the adrenaline now a poison in his veins. As he prepared to flee, he saw Clara in the distance, the face of someone who had no intention of giving up. The hunt had become personal, and he felt cornered. The creativity that once helped him was now becoming a prison. With no options left, he ran, but the police meticulously followed his trail. Every move he made was being tracked. The sirens grew louder as Raphael ran down a street that seemed endless. His legs were tiring, and his heart was racing uncontrollably. He realized he wouldn't be able to escape. The reality was becoming more oppressive. Despair overwhelmed him as he saw the police lights drawing closer. Clara led the team, her instincts sharp and her determination firm. With a shout, she ordered, "Now!" The team closed in, surrounding Raphael in a trap with no exit. The machine was moving, and he was about to be captured. Raphael found himself at a crossroads. The police were approaching him, their voices echoing throughout the dark alley. He made one last desperate attempt to escape, but reality hit him in an instant. Clara stood before him, firm and fearless. "It's over," she said, her voice resolute. He stopped, his world crumbling. The adrenaline that had once driven him now transformed into a profound feeling of helplessness. "There's nowhere to run," he whispered in despair. With his hands raised, Raphael was finally arrested. The horror of what he had done haunted him, and he found himself ensnared in a web of pain and regret. The police escorted him away, and the citizens who had suffered from his actions were now gathered in a safe place. Clara, with her team by her side, watched the conclusion. Surveillance had won, and hope regained its ground. Raphael was no longer a delivery man, he was a criminal. The panic he had caused transformed into his own nightmare. Hours later, Raphael was in custody, surrounded by the sounds of a city now in turmoil. The victims were called to testify, and although this marked an end, the trauma he had caused would remain. Clara knew that no amount of justice could restore peace to those women. However, the struggle he had initiated would now be remembered, not as a victory but as a warning. The operation showcased the importance of unity and vigilance within the community. As he listened to the testimonies, Raphael looked at the women one by one. The looks of fear, pain, and anger pierced him like daggers. Each word he heard was a blow to his conscience. What he had done could not be erased. It was a shame that would follow him forever. He remembered the laughter, the hopes, and the lives he had destroyed. A feeling of regret began to form in his heart. There was no escape left. The true punishment had begun. Clara, hearing each testimony, felt a mix of relief and sadness. The cycle of fear had finally ended, but the impact would leave scars. She believed that the women he had attacked would become even stronger. The city would unite, and the echo of pain would transform into a cry for change. Raphael, now behind bars, seemed a shadow of what he once was. The determination of the victims would become the driving force for change. As Raphael faced his trial, Clara began working on a recovery program for the victims. She knew that true victory would be empowering those women to rise again. With each session and each shared tear, recovery became possible. Clara created a safe space, away from pain, where new hopes could flourish. The city transformed into a beacon of strength, illuminating the path for those who fought. Weeks passed, and the story of Raphael and his victims became an emblematic case in the community. The operation that captured a criminal turned into a victory for all the women who shared their stories. Clara, now a well-known activist, began organizing events and lectures. The central theme, "Never Again." The echo of their voices united to create a powerful breath of change. The women became leaders, promoting awareness and empowerment, showing that together they were stronger. The city, once marked by fear, began to rise as a symbol of resilience. Clara knew that every small achievement counted, and the voices of the community echoed like a song of hope. The past still resonated, but now the women were more determined than ever not to let fear define their lives. Raphael, behind bars, became a reminder of what they needed to overcome. During his time in prison, Raphael had much to think about. The nights became long and cold, filled with memories that tormented him. He reflected on the minds of the women he had hurt, trying to understand the depth of their pain. What could have been a time for reflection transformed into a labyrinth of regret. Slowly, he began to comprehend the true meaning of his actions. The transformation that once seemed impossible began to take root, but he knew that redemption would not be easy and would require more than just remorse. Months passed, and over time, Clara and her team continued to fight tirelessly for justice and support for the victims of violence. They promoted workshops, lectures, and self-defense training sessions. The city united in a collective effort to ensure that no other predator would hide in their community. Although Raphael was still in prison, the impact he had served as a lesson about the dangers of negligence. Clara's story and that of the women resonated in every corner, and the city began to live again in hope and unity, giving new meaning to the future.